Who here has ever heard of the rule of thirds? Awesome. Okay. So the rule of thirds is, like, there's a diagram down here that states that you should always strive to place your subject on one of the circles there that are outlined in red. This is because if, like, your subject is, like, too far off on the side, then it's easy to overlook them, or the shot might look awkward. Do you have anything to say about the rule of thirds? Okay. It's like a cinematography thing, but it's good to keep in mind whenever you're setting up a shot. Also, blocking and placement. So this just essentially means, like, where are you standing on stage or on a camera? Because you don't want to be that, you don't want to set people up so that someone is completely blocked by another person. And in our natural lives, like, we can stand, like, because we live in a three-dimensional world. So I can stand side by side with Jenna, and if somebody's looking over there, they might see Jenna, right? Because they might be, like, a little bit over there or whatever. But if you're filming straight across, like, here, then you can't see Jenna at all because she's behind me. So to film us on stage, you either want to be filming directly ahead of us, maybe a bit from the side, maybe a bit from that side, so you can see both of us. Also, if you're moving, be aware of how your movements might block other people. So if you're doing a fight scene, you want to make sure that one person's, like, back isn't to the camera. You want to make sure they're either on equal planes, or maybe you're switching your angles a bit, just to make sure that it isn't just one person's back and then, like, another person on screen the entire time. In other words, don't be a camera hog. Make sure that everyone is on camera who needs to be on camera. Also, like, knowing your camera and your environment are very important. So if you're in a dark room, you want to make sure that you have light, so that could be, like, even flashlights will work. We've used flashlights before as lighting, and we just had, like, a bunch of people stand in a forest with flashlights, shining them on the people who are being filmed, and it was really shoddy, but it worked. Because if we tried filming without the flashlights, it just would have been completely pitch black. Also, if places are too lit, then people might look washed out, so you have to play around with your camera. Cameras should have things like white balances, where if you want to find the white balance in a room, you take a shot of like a white surface in the room, so that could be like your shirt, or your shirt, or a bunch of shirts in that corner of the room. Also, a white piece of paper can work too, and that'll set the tone of, like, the white tone of the room to that white, so that you don't end up with, like, a yellow glow.
And most cameras have auto white balance, which is really nice.
So you don't even have to do it. Cameras are important. This is an example of rule of thirds. So as you can see, this is our friend Jeanette, and she's on two of the circles. So she's on the top circle and the bottom circle. So top circle is sort of like her jaw / head, and the bottom circle, so that the little, I don't know my left and my right, so I have to go like this to figure out which side is left, this side is left. So the bottom left circle area is on sort of her torso / chest area. So this is an example of rule of thirds, and as you can see, like, the cape just kind of fills up the rest of the space. Live skits. My least favorite of all skits, because you can't delete anything. So a lot of cosplay contests now require you to record audio. And this makes sense in that you don't have to then use microphones on stage, and there's less room for error. But this also makes it difficult to improvise on stage. So for example, at this live skit, so we start doing it. It was at Naka-Kon, which is in Louisiana. It was a Sailor Moon skit we were invited to be a part of. We had one day to learn it. It went by well. And at the end of the first act, this Sailor Moon, I guess, thought that this was like a thing that she could interact with. So she runs up on stage just as we're exiting. Actually, I was still on stage. She runs up on stage, and she just starts screaming at our Queen Beryl, saying, like, "I will defeat you! I come here, I'll beat you up!" In that exact same voice. And we're all just like, what's going on? So we sort of tried to improv with it, but the Queen Beryl just sort of ended up looking at me like, I don't know what to do. And then we, like, got up and just, like, looked at her and walked off stage, because we weren't expecting it. But the Tiger's Eye felt inclined to talk back to her. So he starts talking. He's like, go back from whence you came. Go, be gone. No one wants you here, because he was really mad at her. So they cut his mic so he would stop talking. But this was a difficult skit to do because it was live and because it was Like there are so many people on stage. It would have been better if we had pre-recorded that audio, but then we wouldn't have gotten, like the timing would have been more difficult, because then instead of being able to move at our own paces and say the lines whenever we know is appropriate, we would have had to have kept up with a tape, which means that since there was a lot of movement, our movement might have not synced up entirely with that tape.
And another unfortunate thing with this was that they only had 3 microphones, and there was like 10 people on stage talking. So most of the people couldn't be heard, which was kind of sad. But that's another hiccup that you run into with live performances.
You live and learn. And then this little Rini, so the Chibi Moon, it was so adorable. I just want to tell a story about her. So she was about 8, and she played Rini, so Chibi Moon. She was super into it. And then she figured out, she'd seen Sailor Moon, she figured out partway through that we were playing her parents. We didn't know her, but like in several scenes we had like walk off stage with her like holding hands. And then at one point she looked at us and just like, "You're my mom and you're my dad." And I was like, "Yeah, we're playing those parts, sweetie." And then later on she turned to me and said, "I wish you were actually my mom and my dad. Because then my mom and dad would still be together."
Aww.
And I just started crying internally. I was so sad. It was